Good afternoon. I'm with Kelwyn, that is one of our members, our investors. And thank you, Kevin, for being with us. The European Startup Association, has the mission to scout and matchmake investors and startups. And so it's very appreciated from us, your availability to have this interview. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Kelvin, can you introduce yourself firstly?
Yeah, so I'm Kelwyn, as Adriano was mentioning. I currently work for a fund called Campus Capital, where we are partly student-run and led venture fund. Our inspiration is very much taken from the dorm room fund model in the US, and we work with a number of selected university partners to deliver a venture capital program for students so that they form part of the deal origination, deal sourcing, and investment committee when we make investments as a wider fund. Apart from that, I also advise on startup M&A, so I like to have the end-to-end experience working with early stage founders all the way through to exit. That's from my past experience as an investment banker. And equally, I'm looking at alternative angel investors, blending more into the kinds of investors that perhaps have a bit more influence than the traditional ones that you'd expect.
Oh, perfect. So I read on your website that you introduce yourself as saying that you are focused on equipping yourself with a number of diverse skills and uniquely identifiable experiences. As I think that this is also a sort of common path with a very good CEO of a startup. In your opinion, what are the main skills for a CEO of a startup?
I think, to be honest, that's a good question. I think it's evolved over time. I think there's some skills that are consistent in different flows and different eras. Reid Hoffman actually is well known for mentioning being relevant in different flows, which is almost tantamount to kind of economic cycles. So I think one of them that's perhaps seen a lot more traction in the last few years is the idea of empathy. And that's empathy from an entrepreneur's point of view with the customers that they're trying to serve, with the investors that they take on board, with the employees that they take on, and actually empathy with the broader stakeholder environment that running a startup really entails. I think in today's society, without that, then there is a level of ceiling, there's a performance ceiling for a CEO to be able to deliver a successful startup. And I think that's something that's maybe become more apparent in the last few years. I think one of the skills that I've always seen as the most important is a really deep understanding of the market that the operator is working in. And I think that has been perhaps an underrated skill that perhaps hasn't had the same attention as others that are perhaps traditionally mentioned when we talk about this kind of debate. And by that, I mean people who almost understand the market environment a bit like an equity research analyst would within a bank. So someone that really intimately understands the levers of change that will create dynamic market scenarios that their company is best placed to succeed in. I think that type of entrepreneur who almost sees the trend and acts upon the trend in their real-time decision making will position the company and themselves in a way that they're more likely to benefit from a market tailwind.
Thank you. If I remember well, you are interested in tech startups. So in the earlier stage of their path. And before going deeper on the knowledge of the scenario, I would like to ask you, what are the competencies and the roles needed in a tech startup?
Mm-hmm. I think the first skill needed within a tech startup is an amazing leadership team and a team that has both leadership and operational expertise. I think sometimes people make a false dichotomy between technical skill and ability to run a successful business with product vision and leadership that normally comes with a CEO. I think sometimes people try and conflate the two. I tend to focus on founding teams that share both, a kind of axis on both. A team that has a unique spike in technical competence, market knowledge, market experience, but equally a leadership team that shares an ambitious future and is working towards delivering a business to succeed within that ambitious future. So if they have conviction in really putting forward the problem that they're trying to solve and how their product and their team are uniquely positioned to take the lion's share of that market, that's the most compelling skill for me. So part of that is actually in the storytelling. So sometimes you see some founders and leadership teams that have amazing competencies based on anecdotal backgrounds and what they've done in the past, but perhaps are not able to really articulately storytell how their business is going to serve an ever-pressing need in the market. And I think sometimes that's to do with communication styles and a little bit of experience, but sometimes that can come through in passion and enthusiasm and knowledge of the market.
Thank you. I would like to go a bit deeper on the two topics that we mentioned before. So the first one is the good knowledge of the business, and the second one is the good competencies needed. What are the questions that you ask to the startups once you have a meeting with them to understand better these two topics?
I think in general, I tend to ask open questions. So one of the best interview questions that I think I try to always ask is who is the person? So instead of saying, tell me about yourself, I think that can be a little bit of a leading question. It can lead people into providing quite scripted answers. So I always say, for example, if it was me, I would say, who is Kelwyn Louis? And that gives me an opportunity to demonstrate an answer from multiple angles. It could be, who am I as an individual? Who am I from my values and belief systems? Who am I from my experience anecdotally to date? Who am I with the future-looking view of the world that I have at the moment? So I like to ask quite open and inclusive questions. I think the second point I would like to make is that I try to ask questions where I can platform the expertise of the founder or leadership team of the business. So I try and ask a question in a way that makes me a fan of them and a fan of their business. So one question I tend to always ask is, make me leave this meeting wanting to ferociously Google and research this industry, this business, your product, your team. Make me a fan. And actually, sometimes people use the word fan as this kind of obscure term, but I go back to the derivation of the word, which comes from the Greek fanatic and fanatical. And I think of a fan as someone really fanatical about an opportunity, about a problem that they're trying to solve. So one question I always ask entrepreneurs is, provide me with a reason to become fanatical about your business and you as a lead entrepreneur.
As you are fanatic of Manchester.
Exactly. I'm a fanatic of Manchester United, of course. And I have been for a very long time, not just a follower. So many people would say that, I'm a follower of Manchester United rather than a fan. So people might say I'm a fan, but actually they're followers really. Whereas I'm truly fanatical.
Yeah, okay. As I'm a fan of Juventus, so
exactly. equally as good a team. We both share Cristiano, so.
Okay, thank you so much, because your answers are really precious for our startups to understand how to struggle to fight during the pitching match with investors, or how to involve investors in their project. So thank you so much. I think that we will ask you to be keen to be a mentor of our startups as soon as possible, because you have so many things to share with our startups, and I think it's a very interesting way to make them grow up. And so, yeah, thank you so much for your availability, and hope to see you soon in person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adriano, for this opportunity.